The date is January 19th, 1991. The Miami Arena is a powder keg of electricity, the air thick with anticipation. It's the fourth ever Royal Rumble, and only 2 men remain. The crowd is a sea of bobbing heads, a deafening roar of 16,000 voices, but all eyes are on the ring. On one side stands Hulk Hogan, the seemingly immortal embodiment of the American dream, a red and yellow icon. On the other stands Earthquake, a mountain of a man who had, for nearly a year, been positioned as Hogan's greatest threat. This wasn't just a challenger, he was a force of nature, a monster meticulously crafted in the laboratory of Vince McMahon's imagination. With his enormous frame and a sit-down splash that often sent opponents to the hospital on a stretcher, Earthquake is the perfect foil for the superhero Hogan. He is the unstoppable object to Hogan's immovable force. And here, in the final moments of the Royal Rumble, Earthquake seems to have the advantage. He had brutalized and dominated every opponent in his path, moving with a chilling, purposeful swagger that belied his size. He has even managed to stand toe-to-toe with Hogan himself, a feat few others could claim. The tension was almost unbearable, but then, with a Herculean effort born of pure narrative necessity, Hogan body slams the giant before hitting him with a vicious clothesline, sending the 468-pound behemoth tumbling over the top rope. The arena erupted. Hogan had done it again. He had slayed the monster. In that moment, as Earthquake hit the floor with a thud that could be felt in every seat, something shifted. It was a symbolic elimination that marked both the pinnacle of his push and the beginning of a subtle, undeniable decline. Despite all the build-up, all the terror and destruction, the monster had been slain. And in the mercilessly forward-moving world of the Federation, a slain monster is a monster with an expiration date. Within 2 years, he would be gone, a ghost of the dominant force he once was. How did a man with such a promising start, with a gimmick so perfectly suited for the era, fade so quickly? The story of Earthquake is not just the story of a wrestler, it's a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of wrestling stardom, the unforgiving hierarchy of a wrestling promotion, and the unpredictable whims of a creative mastermind named Vince McMahon. His journey to the World Wrestling Federation was as unlikely as it was fascinating. Born John Tenta in Surrey, British Columbia in 1963, he was a giant from the very beginning, a baby weighing over 11 pounds. Inspired by Canadian wrestling legends like Gene Kiniski, he found his calling early. He was a natural athlete, excelling in freestyle wrestling and even earning a scholarship to Louisiana State University. But it was a different path that would first bring him international attention, the ancient ritualistic world of sumo wrestling. Recruited to Japan, he embraced the strenuous lifestyle and traditions of the dojo, adopting the name Tenta. In an impressive but brief 8-month career, he never lost a match, winning all 21 of his bouts. He was a comet streaking across the sumo sky. But the brutal physicality of the sport, the unforgiving nature of the ring, and the strict rules of the sumo world, including a prohibition on his beloved tiger tattoo, led him to make a fateful decision. He quit, leaving the sumo world with a perfect undefeated record, an unheard-of feat. He then seamlessly transitioned to professional wrestling in Japan under the tutelage of the legendary Giant Baba, a move that would ultimately put him on a collision course with destiny and the World Wrestling Federation. In late 1989, Tenta arrived in the company, not as a superstar, but as a meticulously planned spectacle. Vince McMahon, with his incisive mind for character creation and theatrics, cast him in the perfect role. He made his television debut not in the ring, but in the audience, a random fan named John from West Virginia. During an in-ring challenge between Dino Bravo and the Ultimate Warrior, he was brought in to sit on their backs during a push-up contest. It was a classic pro wrestling ruse. With a signal from manager Jimmy Hart, John revealed his true nature, brutally attacking the Ultimate Warrior with his trademark sit-down splash. In an instant, the gentle giant was gone, replaced by the monstrous, menacing Earthquake. His rise was meteoric. With Jimmy Hart as his devious mouthpiece, Earthquake became a main event player almost overnight. He was the perfect vehicle for McMahon's theatrical narratives, a monstrous heel whose defining move was so visually impactful and seemingly devastating that it felt genuinely dangerous. His first major feud was with Hulk Hogan, the man he was literally designed to destroy. The rivalry began with a shocking and now iconic ambush on the Brother Love show, where Earthquake repeatedly crushed Hogan's ribs with his splash, sending Hogan into a kayfabe convalescence. For a few short months, it appeared that the monster was unstoppable, a genuine threat to the very foundations of Hulkamania. The feud culminated in a series of matches, including a count-out victory for Hogan at SummerSlam 1990. But the most telling moment came in that aforementioned 1991 Royal Rumble. That elimination, while a win for Hogan, was a loss for Earthquake's long-term momentum. The illusion was gone. The monster could be beaten. Following his rivalry with Hogan, Earthquake found a new target in Jake the Snake Roberts. This feud was darker, more visceral, and entirely emblematic of the savage, cartoonish brutality of the era. The most infamous moment was the Quakeburgers segment. After attacking Roberts and squashing his beloved Snake, Damien Earthquake appeared on Primetime Wrestling and, with a demented grin, cooked up snake burgers, gleefully serving them to an unsuspecting Bobby the Brain Heenan and Lord Alfred Hayes. It was a moment of shocking, heelish depravity that solidified Earthquake's place as a top villain. But as 1991 progressed, Earthquake's role began to subtly change. While still a dominant force, he was no longer positioned as a top-tier monster. He found a new purpose in the tag team division, forming a formidable and surprisingly beloved duo with his real-life friend, Fred Ottman, who was now wrestling as Typhoon. The two became the Natural Disasters, a team of colossal, lumbering giants who, managed by Jimmy Hart, initially terrorized the Federation's other tag teams. But the audience, ever perceptive, saw something in the two friendly giants, and when Jimmy Hart betrayed them to manage their new rivals, Money Inc., the Natural Disasters turned babyface. Their run as good guys was a revelation. Tenta, a man who, according to Bret Hart, was a quiet, gentle soul in real life who hated having to scare children as a heel, finally got to be himself. The cheers from the crowd, especially from the kids he once had to terrify, were genuinely meaningful to him. They would go on to win the Tag Team Championship, an achievement that cemented their place in the company's history and gave Tenta a championship run he never had as a singles star. But this new, friendlier, and less menacing version of Earthquake wasn't the same monster that had been built up to challenge Hulk Hogan. He was a gentle giant now, a different kind of character, and as a new generation of talent began to emerge, his time as a top-flight singles star was over. By early 1993, with the company in a state of transition, the Natural Disasters broke up, and Earthquake quietly left the company before making a surprise comeback in early 1994. He returned as a babyface and had a memorable feud with another former sumo, Yokozuna. The two men squared off in a sumo match on Monday Night Raw, a bizarre but entertaining spectacle that harkened back to Tenta's brief, undefeated career in Japan. Earthquake, despite his now smaller physique, won the match. It was a fleeting moment of glory, however. After suffering a storyline injury at the hands of Yokozuna and his ally Crush, Tenta once again vanished from the company. The monster was gone. His career, however, was not over quite yet. Like many wrestlers of the era, he found his way to World Championship Wrestling. There, he wrestled under a series of new names and gimmicks, first as Avalanche, then as the Shark, both of which felt like pale imitations of his former self. He joined the infamous Dungeon of Doom, a stable of theatrical monsters designed to feud with Hulk Hogan, a familiar role for Tenta. But this landscape was different. The Dungeon of Doom was a cartoonish stable in a company moving towards a more realistic aesthetic. Tenta, in a moment of a genuine feeling rebellion, dropped the gimmicks and began wrestling under his own name. In a powerful promo, he declared, "I'm not the Shark, I'm not a fish, I'm not an avalanche, I'm a man." It was a moment of clarity and truth in a world full of artifice. But like his Federation run, this was the same story of a great talent being misused. As the late 90s dawned, with the wrestling world caught in the throes of the rebellious attitude era, a significantly lighter Tenta made a return to the Federation, but not as the Earthquake the fans remembered. He was now Golga, a bizarre masked character with an obsession with the South Park character Eric Cartman. He was part of the Oddities, a faction of misfit, carnival-like wrestlers. It was a strange, almost humiliating turn for a man who had once main evented against Hulk Hogan. The gimmick was a reflection of the company's new direction and Tenta's significant weight loss, which, from a storyline perspective, made it impossible to credibly present him as a colossal monster. After a short, forgettable run, the oddities were dismantled, and Tenta was released. He made one final heartwarming appearance as Earthquake in the gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17, a moment of nostalgic joy for the fans who remembered his greatness. But the final chapter of his story is a tragic one. After a brief return to the independent circuit and a final run in Japan, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. He fought the disease with courage and dignity, but in 2006, just 2 weeks shy of his 43rd birthday, John Tenta passed away. The story of Earthquake is a bittersweet symphony of triumph and tragedy. He was a character so brilliant in his conception that he threatened the very face of the company, a monster so dominant he was the only true foil for its biggest star. He was a tag team champion, a fan favorite, and a beloved figure backstage. But his story is also a testament to the fact that even the most dominant monsters are eventually made to fall. And in the world of professional wrestling, a monster who has been buried is a monster who will never truly be resurrected. The memory of that night in Miami, of the giant tumbling over the top rope, remains a poignant symbol of a career that shone so brightly before slowly, inexorably fading away. May he rest in peace,